I consider myself an Aboriginal person, so there's a small population of us. There's only about 400,000 Aboriginal people. My father's Aboriginal, my mum's non-Aboriginal, so our connection to Australia goes back at least 50,000 years. But for a long period of time, because we were colonised by England and very oppressed socially, and our land was taken over, and we went through a whole series of, at that time, very racist policies. So in the sort of Black Power movement that spread through the world in the 1960s and 70s, part of the self-determination movement was that Aboriginal people would take control of their representation, and in the political world, and also that extended to filmmaking and the representation of us, because we've been misrepresented as savages, inferior, and generally not a nice bunch of people. So in the 70s and 80s, Aboriginal activists entered into the bureaucracy and staged all sort of political acts so that we could so that young Indigenous people, I'm not young anymore, but I was once, could take up training opportunities and get access to funds within the government funding arrangements that were there for broadcasting and cinema. So we started to make a space for ourselves in the Australian film and television industry. So I made a movie, and since that time I've just been making a range of things: documentary, movies, TV drama, and I think it's a great way to be able to make, storytelling can be in any form, and I don't think we should be limited to one genre or another. People get very limited. They try and label you. They say, oh, you're a documentary maker, you never make a movie. Luckily I've been able to do all of those things, and they've been equally enriching and challenging. So I think also with cinema, and we all watch television, we all watch cinema. People try and pretend it's this sort of thing that you're not allowed to have a view on, or it's this exclusive club. But actually, we all have these days we all watch so much content that I think that making films is not as difficult as, it's difficult, but we all have a sense of what we like, our taste, like those things we all have just by watching stuff. We're all very literate in screen language. So the development period can go for some years, 10 years, 20 years, or it can be very fast. But for a feature, you would normally spend a year in development, because it takes 3 or 4 months to do each draft. So a minimum year in development for a feature, probably that period for a television series, depending on how quickly you sort of did it. So there's the development period, then there's what's called pre-production, which is when you're sort of conceptualising where you're going to shoot it, gathering a crew, finance it. Well, you probably financed before you're in pre-pre. Sort of sketching out the parameters of the production. Then you're in pre-production, which is, a sort of a number of weeks depending on the scale of the film you're making. So for an average Australian movie, which might shoot between 6 and 8 weeks for a reasonably budgeted film, you'd spend 6 weeks in pre-production. So pre-production is when you bring all your heads of departments on. So in filmmaking there's different departments. There's the director, there's the production designer who takes care of everything you see. So that person usually sits over costume, set design, props, the props people, the props buyers, set dressers. So they have a big crew of people. So that production designer is one head of a department. The DOP, the director of photography, and they bring on their own gaffer, which is the lighting person, and a grip. A grip is the person who moves the camera. Sound department usually come on fairly quickly, only have a short pre-production period. Who else have I forgotten? Safety department, safety and stunts. So the director's sort of, and then of course there's the producers sitting above the director, and maybe a line producer as well, and they have a department called production, which is line producer, production manager, production coordinator, production assistants, runners. So you can have on an average Australian film about 100 people, for between sort of 40 to 100 people to run a feature film. So pre-production starts, all those people come on board, they all break down the script, work out all the jobs they're doing, buy everything, bring everything together. Oh, the first assistant director, who works alongside the director, they break down the script and schedule it all, cluster the shoot days depending on where the actors are, your locations. You'll have often a person who will scout locations with the director. So most of the locations are found during pre-production. The costumes, people get fitted, all the designs and builds are done for your sets. You try to shoot a script that is too long, you're wasting time, because your film will probably never be more than an hour and a half if it's a movie. So what you do is you do a timing on your script to make sure it's not too long or it's not too short. So average is a page a day. So you want your movie to be about 90 to 100 minutes long. So the first will break that all down. You shoot it all out of order, which is really confusing. So you might shoot, one scene from, page 10, and then one scene from page 40, and then go to one page from 52. And so the actors and everyone needs to be prepared for that. You do rehearsals during pre-production as well. So the pre-production is a very busy time for the director, deciding the most mundane things like blue shirt or red shirt to where you're going to shoot, how it's going to work out. So the shoot runs for 6 weeks. You have to be you burn a lot of money during shooting. It's the most expensive time because you've got 60 people all employed. And if you go like half an hour over, it's like the clock is ticking. It's like $4,000. 1 hour, $10,000. 1.5 hours, $15,000. So you need to be very organised on set. Time is your absolute definer of what the director must decide. So in a way, the director's job, a good director, is thinking about how they're going to spend their resources. Do I want 50 extras, or do I want a car that's going to roll over? Because you've only got limited money, so you think, okay, where am I going to put my resources in this film to work out what the production value might be? So do I want an explosion, or can I just have the car stall, and rather than have the explosion, I'll have the 100 people in the bank, whatever it is. The director's job is primarily to work out how they're going to spend their resources in the film, and also, of course, the style of the film. But an irresponsible director who doesn't know how to spend their time or their resources is just a pain in the ass to everybody. It shouldn't be doing their job. So the first AD and the director have this great relationship where they work out what you're going to do with your time. So in that 6 to 8 weeks, it's just hell-raisingly busy, and you just run, on a low-budget film that, is within my grasp. We might shoot TV runs faster than television, much faster, so on an average Australian film you shoot three minutes a day, so 3 or 4 pages a day. It's a very, filmmaking is a very, certainly feature film, which is high risk, but high profile, can be, is a very mercurial thing because you often don't know where it's going to go, and how it's going to end up. There's just, you can put all the best work, hard preparation, which you must do, like it's preparation. Give everything you've got to it, which is absolutely necessary. Like no one walks through a feature film, you really crawl over broken glass to make it almost, but then it can just turn out like a disaster, even if you've worked very, very hard. We started in the process of, it was aimed at being like a history of Indigenous Australia for Aboriginal people, and we started making it, and we started writing it about, and this is actually a good note I think, we started writing it and the scripts were around themes, so we're sort of like, this episode 1's going to be about home, episode 2 is going to be about, I can't even remember, well, they were thematic subjects. So we wrote those scripts for 6 months, we brought on all these researchers and we, ferreted away, and we just couldn't make the scripts work. And then we met Ken Burns, who's an American documentary maker. Some people now say his work is out of fashion or whatever, but he makes brilliant documentaries. And we met him in Australia, and it was really nice. He came over to lunch, and I said to him, can you give us some advice? We're stuck with this series. And he said a really simple thing, 2 things. One is, well, a couple of things actually. He said, people want stories about people. to make stories interesting, it has to be personal. That's what makes storytelling work. What happened to that person? What did they lose? What did they gain? What were their challenges? What emotions did they go through? That is what storytelling is about, the person. Make your films, don't make them about these big thematics. Make it about a person who went through this time and what they did and how they were and who they were and how they changed. And he said that will get your audience interested and that will give you the narrative to find your way through it. The other thing he said is chronology. You know, he said chronology is, people say it's boring, but actually chronology works. This person went there, then this happened, then that happened, and then this happened, and that happened afterward. So he said, like, tell the story chronology in a chronological manner, through people, make it personal, and all of the culture and the richness that you're trying to get in these big thematics, and all of these big themes that you're trying to tell, those are like the flesh that will be on this skeleton, which is the narrative of this person.
It's good, you write something, awesome, you shoot it, awesome, after leaving all the egos on set.
Yes.
You edit, that's fine, and then what do you do with it?
Yeah, well, often the distribution of films is quite different, well, it's absolutely different from the process of production. So in Australia, and I don't know what it's like here, but in Australia we sell our rights to the distributors. So once whatever it is, whether it's a documentary series, there'll be certain people who distribute that sort of material, so there'll be like factual distributors. So you basically do a contract for license with them for like 7 years, usually it is. So they get, usually the rights divided between your local rights, so in my case Australia, in the Pacific, and then there'll be another set of rights for international. So you sell the local rights and then you sell the international rights to a sales agent. So a sales agent will then sell those rights around the world. So then they'll sell into every well, as many markets as they can sell. So there's always two agreements, a distribution for local agreement and a sales agent agreement for international. And so then it'll be up to the international sales agent to sell the content.